Hi, I'm Wendy from Shiny Happy World, and this Papa and Baby Penguin pair are the new patterns in the Funny Faces Quilt Block of the Month Club. And when I say new, I mean they are releasing today, that is May 15th, 2021. So if you are in the club, this pattern is in the clubhouse now for you to download and make. If you're not in the club yet and you join, you'll get immediate access to these patterns until June 15th, 2021, which is when we'll have a new pattern available. If you're not in the club and you don't want to join, you'll still be able to get this pattern. You're just going to have to wait a little while. It'll probably be in the shop at Shiny Happy World sometime the first week in July. So that is kind of where you find the pattern. Now I'm just going to give you a really quick nuts and bolts introduction to how I do Quilt As You Go, because it's different from what most people do. So the first thing I do is pretend like this applique is not here yet. I layer the fabric onto the batting and I do all of the quilting first. So I quilt that block before I add any applique to it. That makes it really fun. It's just kind of doodling to quilt it, and I don't have to worry about stopping and starting and going around my applique. Then I do the applique on top of that quilting. Then I do all of my outline stitching. Then I crop the blocks down to size. So I start with an 11-inch block. I trim it down to 10.5 inches after I get all of the work done on it. And then I sew the blocks together with a 1/4-inch seam allowance so that it finishes at 10 inches square. So I sew all the blocks together after they've been quilted. There's no backing yet on this block. I press the seams open, and then I add the backing, and I do just one final round of quilting to secure the backing to the front of the quilt, where I'm just doing straight line stitching, stitching in the ditch between all of these blocks. So that the only quilting that I have to do with the whole mass of the quilt that I'm trying to wrestle through the machine is straight lines every 10 inches apart. It's very, very minimal quilting. I can do a nap size quilt, which is the size I like to use on the couch, in about a half an hour. So I can handle wrestling the whole mass of the quilt through the machine if it's only for a half an hour and it's all straight lines. So I'm not trying to turn corners or anything like that. So that is, in a nutshell, how I do Quilt As You Go. Now I'm going to show you how to make this penguin pair. Okay, this month's pattern is a Papa and Baby Emperor Penguin. We're getting this out in time for Father's Day. And the first thing you're going to need to do is print the pattern out. It's 2 pages because the pieces are a little bit on the big side. I couldn't get them all to fit on a single sheet. So you can print it out on paper and trace it onto your fusible adhesive. So this is the fusible adhesive that I use. I use Heat and Bond and the Lightweight for all of my quilt patterns. So they're all the ones with the purple labels. You've got a couple of different options. You can buy a big long piece of it and trace it by hand, in which case you would just print your pattern pieces out on paper. Or if you're lazy like me and don't like to trace, you can print it directly onto these printable sheets. So whichever way you do it, know that the pieces that are in your pattern are already reversed and they are already exploded, which means any pieces that would normally overlap have been pulled apart. So after you get them onto your fusible adhesive, whichever method you decide to use, then you need to cut it apart just roughly. You want to leave a little bit extra white space all the way around and fuse it to the wrong side of the fabric. So you're going to do that for all of the pattern pieces. And just to give you a quick look at the colors on the penguin, we've got a few different colors. So the back, Papa's back piece, his wing piece, his head piece, and the baby's head piece are all, in real life, those would all be black. I've decided for mine to do those in the darkest blue. I chose blue for the video because it's a lot easier to see blue in a video and in photographs than it is to see black or white. So you've also got a medium color. A baby penguin's body is gray, not black or white. So for that, I used kind of a medium blue, the stripes from the Little Stripes fabric bundle. And then the lightest color, which would in real life would be white. I've used a lighter blue for that, and that's going to be for the Papa's belly piece and for the baby's face piece. And then the male emperor penguins have a yellow spot on their neck. So I've got a little piece of gold for that. And then you're going to need a couple of eyes that I just use solid black fabric for. So get all of those pieces roughly cut out, fused to the back side of the paper. For now, you want to ignore all of these dotted lines. So you're just looking at the solid lines. Cut it out a little bit past all those solid lines, fuse them to the wrong side of the fabric. And in the next one, we'll talk about cutting those out. Okay, once you get all the pieces fused down and rough cut, the next step is to do a clean cut. And the clean cut is really simple. You just do a nice, neat cut all on the solid lines all the way around. We'll get to those dotted lines next. So the reason for doing this, right now, the fusible adhesive goes to the edge of the paper. And if I cut this piece out exactly on the solid line and then fused it down and then went to cut the fabric out, I'd have to be really careful and cut the fabric exactly on that line. And I'd run the risk of a little bit of it, even just a sliver of it, not being coated with the adhesive. And that's a place where your finished applique can fray when you put it in the wash. So by cutting it out roughly the first time, now the adhesive is going past the edge where I'm going to cut. So when I'm doing the clean cut later, I'm making absolutely sure, without having to be super weird about my cutting, that the adhesive now goes all the way to the edge of those cut pieces, and it really does cover every single thread. So I'm going to get a much cleaner finish. I want to be able to put my quilt in the washing machine and the dryer when I'm done, and that's going to help keep those edges from fusing. So after you get all of those pieces clean cut, then we're going to talk about the placement lines. Okay, pretty soon we're going to be placing this all onto the block and peeling off the paper backing. But before we peel that backing off, we want to transfer all of these dotted lines to the front side of the fabric. Let me pull up a piece that's the darkest blue so you can see most clearly. So these lines show where pieces overlap, where pieces tuck underneath other pieces, where pieces sit entirely on top of it, like for an eye. And they're shown with a dotted line. So here we've got a dotted line going all here, showing where the wing is going to overlap. And you can see that if you hold this up into a window and let the light shine through it, you can see those lines very clearly through it. And I've just transferred that now, just traced over it on the front of the fabric. So I use a couple of different tools for my tracings. For eyes, I didn't do it here because that white was just really showing up, but usually I will do eyes with just a fine Sharpie. I'm going to cover it with a solid black applique, so it doesn't matter if this is a permanent marker and the line is going to show through it, because it won't show through the solid black fabric. But I only use this for eyes, noses, and mouths. The thing that I use most often is just a white chalk. I don't use the colored chalks. I find that they can leave a little bit of color behind, but the white ones I'm able to erase completely. And on that one, I've got a line all the way around the edge here showing where the baby's face tucks behind the black headpiece. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but I've traced that with the white chalk. It's really clear to me, but it's not always clear in the video. So that's why I chose this fabric, because it's got the dark blue. The yellow spot, I've also got the chalk line marked. So I'll use that for almost all the pieces. This almost always works for something in person. The one time it doesn't is if the fabric is really, really light, and that's when I use just a regular pencil. This is nothing fancy, it's just a number 2 pencil. And I'll use that, so I'm making another version of this with the natural black and white colors. And on that, the white chalk is never going to show up on the white fabric. So in that case, I will use a pencil. And for both of these, for both the chalk and the pencil, you can erase those with a plain white eraser. If your eraser has a colored eraser, if your pencil has a colored eraser, don't use that. I find that will leave a smudge on your fabric where the lead will not. but the white artist eraser, they're very inexpensive. You can get it at any craft store or art supply store. These will erase both the pencil lines and the chalk lines without leaving a mark. So you want to transfer all of the dotted lines onto the front side of the fabric so that those positions are still marked even after you peel the paper off. And that's what we're going to get to next, is putting it all together. Okay, all the pieces are clean cut, all of your markings are transferred. It is time to start putting this together, which is the fun part. So I'm going to start with the Papa belly piece, and it goes just a little bit to the side of the center. So on this block, it's a little misleading because I've got the fabric is bigger than my batting square. Fold these edges under so you can see more clearly the shape of the block. So this is going to go just a little bit to the side of the center, and the straight edge at the bottom of the belly piece, push this up a little bit more, needs to line up with the raw edge at the bottom of the block. Okay, so that is that piece. Next up, we're going to put the back piece. This overlaps the belly piece a little bit, and you can see on the belly piece, I've got a marking there showing me how much it needs to be overlapped. So once I cover up that line that I traced, I know I've overlapped it enough. All right, and that is going to fit. I'm going to smush this over just a squidge more, just to give myself a little bit more room on the side there, because I want to make sure that it's not going to butt right up against. Once I sew that together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to lose a little bit there. All right, and now there's going to be a wing that goes right in here. And you can see the line showing where that's going to overlap, and the straight edge at the bottom, just like these other two pieces, is going to line up with the bottom edge of your block. So that is done. Now, let's put this head piece in. Gets a little bit more complicated here. This one, there's a lot of pieces to it, but it's not actually super complicated. So we're gonna cover up this snaky line here on the side, and we still have a piece we need to tuck in there, but I'm just doing this to get the positioning. So I want to make sure that the bottom edge of the head lines up with the bottom edge of the neck there, and the top edge is going to line up with the back. So this one is actually, it's a weird shaped piece, but it's actually not too tricky to put in place. And now I'm going to just lift this up and put this guy under there where his markings show. And there we go. Make sure I've got it still lined up. So I've got the top there, the bottom there, that's all covered. So that's his little marking there. Let me go ahead and give him his eye. And then we'll get into the baby. So there's Papa. So Papa is completely done. And now the baby is going to overlap here at Papa's belly. So first I'm going to lay this piece down. Oops. And again, once I cover up that line, I know that I'm good, and the straight edge is lined up with the straight edge at the bottom of the block. And then this is, I'm just going to set this down for a second. I've peeled the back off the face and off the head. Now the head also overlaps Papa's belly there, and this edge is going to line up with his back. And then we need to tuck this piece under. So I'm just going to peel this back for a second, put this one underneath there, and now double check and make sure everything is. So I set it down a little bit crooked. I want to make sure that this piece, so that his head, just trying to just shift it a little bit. So I want the head piece to continue on to this little bit where his mouth is. So I want that to be a continuous line. And there we go. So that's so I'm just double checking. I've got a continuous line here up his back where it joins onto his head, from his chin to the white of him, and then again from the white down to the gray body. And all we're missing now is an itty bitty baby penguin eye. And that I'm gonna go right there where it's marked. Make sure the white is showing all the way around it. All right, now I'm going to take this over to the ironing board and I'm going to double check, make sure I didn't shift anything while I was moving it. Get that all fused down. Just follow the directions for whatever brand of fusible adhesive you are using. And then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and outline all those pieces. So the next thing I'll do is I'll come back here and show you the finished outline and also show the versions to you in the other colors that I did. Okay, here are the penguins all finished and I've done all of the outlining. I always do my outlining with just normal black thread and I go around all the pieces 3 times to get kind of a sketchy, scribbly sketchbook kind of look to it. You don't have to do that if you like the thicker line but don't want to go around it 3 times. You can use a thicker thread. You can also satin stitch around it or do decorative stitching. It's totally up to you, and I have tutorials at Shiny Happy World for all of those options. But I did just a simple straight line, which I really, really like. And I'm just going to kind of talk you through a little bit. I always start at the top of the pile. So all of these fabric pieces are overlapping each other. You want to start when you're doing your outlining with the piece that is most on top. So that is going to be the wing and the baby's head here. So I chose to start with the baby's head and went around this head piece 3 times. And then the next layer down is its body. So I did the body and then I did the little head. And then I went over here and did the wing. So I started with the wing and then I did this back piece and then the head piece and then the yellow piece, because that overlaps the very bottom of the Papa penguin stack, is his belly piece. And then I just go once around the eyes because it's black stitching on black fabric and you can't see that sketchy look anyway. So that is the finished block, and I just wanted to show you a couple more colors that I did it in. So I wanted to do just a realistic colors, and for that I used fabrics from the Warm Neutral Batiks bundle plus a white on white. The white here is not a batik. I really wanted a white for it. So that's what this one is, and this one is already trimmed down to size, so you can see you want to make sure when you trim it that you're just shaving off the bottom edge of the Papa and baby, so that when you sew the blocks together, it looks like they are cropped just like it's a photograph, so where they wouldn't be cut off floating in the middle of the photograph. You want the edge of the photo to cut them off. So that is one version. Oh, and one more note. So since it's a black eye on a black head, on an actual penguin, you can't see his eyes because it's a black eye on a black head. But on this one, I wanted to show you the option. I do have a tutorial at Shiny Happy World that shows you how to add a little layer of color behind the eye to help dark eyes show up on a dark background. So I did that on this one, but not on the next one. This one, I really like how it turned out. So I decided to do, instead of the more realistic looking black and whites, I went for a very graphic, all black and white prints. So these are all fabrics from the black and whites bundle. And I just chose for the black, the prints that had the most black to them, and the white was a print that had the most white to it. And then for the gray was one that fell somewhere in between. And then I used just a little patch of yellow from the Rainbow Brights bundle because there was no way to do that in black and white and get that effect. But I really like these black and white prints on this bright green background. So those are all the different versions that I did of the Papa and baby penguin pair, and I can't wait to see what you guys do. This is the pattern for the Funny Faces Quilt Block of the Month Club for May 15th, 2021, and I'll be back next month with a brand new pattern.